We'll start with the South region. The top seed, Auburn, followed by Michigan State. Iowa State on the 3 line, followed by Texas A&M. Odds to win the South region, Auburn is plus 105. Michigan State is plus 480. Iowa State 5-1. Texas A&M 12-1. Louisville 18-1. Ole Miss 20-1. And you see Michigan, which I thought was interesting, at 22-1. North Carolina has to play San Diego State in a play-in game tomorrow. The Heels barely got in, and they are 42-1 to win the South. So Texas is a team that will also play in the play-in game. We'll talk about that later on in the show and maybe handicap those games tomorrow. But when you look at the South region here, Chelsa, do you still like Auburn despite a little bit of a stumble at the end of the year, losing 2 of 3?
I think their matchup's actually pretty good as far as the draw for the bracket, because it just depends on how high you are on Michigan and Michigan State. Because I do think a lot of people will probably have Michigan State advancing out of this bracket just because a lot of people see the brand name, they see Tom Izzo, and it's very easy to go with these big brand name head coaches. I do think offensively that Michigan State is going to have trouble keeping up with Auburn. And here's the thing, just because you don't win your conference tournament doesn't mean that, everything's going to go to hell. Like, obviously you want to have some momentum, but I do think it's a good buy low spot on Auburn, who kind of got a wake-up call over the weekend that you got to make your free throws and you have to be better in the final 2 minutes of the game. But if you look in the Final Four, like, here's some trends. Of the last 11 winners, 8 of those teams did not win their conference tournament. So winning a conference tournament doesn't mean, everything when it comes to March Madness. So I think Auburn kind of fits that bill. They're still a deep team. I still believe in them. So I still think that Auburn has a pretty good draw here. I think that, maybe the main slip up would be Michigan State. But as far as their first 2 rounds, like, maybe Creighton gives them a scare. But I do think Auburn has a pretty good draw here.
Yeah, I think they have a very good draw. And so I would discuss with myself, okay, do you want to take Auburn at plus 105 to win the South, or do you want Auburn at 4-1 to win the national championship? And I don't really know the answer to that because it's obviously harder to win the Natty, but plus 105 is not necessarily something that appeals to me. But you're right. As far as the bracket goes and how this sets up, I mean, it's never easy. But if your number 2 seed is Michigan State, and of course Tom Izzo is, one of the GOATs, and they'll be coached up and ready to go if they end up meeting Auburn. I feel like as far as roads go, this is a pretty, not an easy bracket, but it could be much worse. This is going to be a pretty pleasant field or run for Auburn potentially, as opposed to other number 1 seeds.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a favorable matchup.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting, and this is something that we haven't seen in years past, is that they could potentially get some SEC opponents in their own bracket. And I understand that in years past, they try not to do conference opponents, but the SEC had 14 teams? It's a record or something with how many teams they got into March Madness. So, Jenks, let me ask you this. Do you think the familiarity helps the opponent, or do you think it helps Auburn, the fact that they faced some of these teams before? Because in this side of the bracket, you've got Texas A&M, which Auburn has beaten before, and you also get Ole Miss, which Auburn has beaten before. Do you think this helps, like, the opponents, though? Because obviously they've faced Auburn before as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a real advantage either way, but I think that familiarity is just something that goes into coaching. So you say, okay, how much do you trust the respective head coaches here getting ready for an opponent that they have seen before? And ultimately, all things being equal, then I think you sort of lean towards the team that has the most talent. And certainly Auburn is that talent. But I will also say maybe that makes these games closer. If we're talking about betting these games, then maybe it makes them closer than you might anticipate if you're looking at the numbers, because that familiarity is there.